Hey guys, welcome to another underwriting call. Um, Allie is going to be doing a presentation on self-storage today, which is really exciting. Um, and Alex's wife, it's her birthday today, so he's not here. So you're stuck with me. But without further ado, I want to give Allie the stage so she can do her presentation. I'm very excited to learn a little more. So I will spotlight you. I think you're muted, Allie.
Sorry. Host would like your video for okay. Wait, what do I host has spotlight your video? Would you like unmute myself. Duh. Nick, I sent Alex the presentation, but I can share my screen, right?
Yeah. I'll give you, yeah, you have share screen privileges. I'd probably
Okay.
be able to find it, but
Okay, perfect.
okay.
And then hold on one second. Oh, wait. How do you know how you do presenter view? Do you know how to do
Are
you
you
know
on Google Slides?
no Canva?
There's a way. Let me see. Hold on.
I've
Technical
never used
difficulties, guy.
I've never used Canva before, but I actually like it was actually pretty nice.
Yeah, I almost never use Canva for presentation, but now.
Only because I have some notes on my presentation view,
Uh-huh.
but
Let me see.
sorry guys.
Sorry. Oops. Oh, so if you hit the present button, there's present full screen and then presenter view.
So I think I'm in presenter
Because
view, but
presenter view will have the notes on the right side, I think. Wow.
this one. Which
Okay, so actually, there's like a presenter. This is here. I could go in to present the slides, and
yeah,
then you can do notes.
I sent them to Alex's email. Alex at
Yeah, Alex at Lovely Media.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Well, if you want to introduce yourself while I pull this up, do
So
that.
hi everyone. My name is Allie. Some people here know me. Some people probably do not. Me and my business partner and my life partner, Johnny, we came into commercial real estate. Well, actually, technically, Nick, you have to go through the slides. So I have my
Okay.
intro
Well,
slide, but I could skip past that
I'm
also.
I'm looking. Hold on. When did you send this?
Like a few, like probably like 15 minutes ago, maybe.
Okay, I don't see it.
Okay, let me.
You put
I
the
could.
Canva link in chat, maybe?
Yeah. I shared the link with him so he could go into the.
You emailed it to him?
Yeah.
I don't see it. Not in the last 15 minutes.
Okay. Let me go back and see if I can.
Actually, I got it. Perfect. It
You
was
got it.
from some investment email. That's why.
Oh,
Alrighty.
okay.
Sorry, guys. Still a share screen. Boom.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Good,
You see
right?
this?
Yep. And then I have mine up, so that's perfect. Okay, that works.
There you go.
All
Great.
right. But so I just have to tell you when to click.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, you can move to the next slide because I'm gonna do an intro with the next slide. Okay, perfect. Okay, start over, everyone. So my name is Allie. This is my partner Johnny, so you can meet him because he's not here, he's at work. But Johnny and I come from two very different backgrounds. He is a entrepreneur by nature. That's how I describe him. He comes from a family of business owners, entrepreneurs, And so he has pretty much never worked for anyone. He has always either worked for his dad or worked for himself. So he is a personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, and the owner of his business, which is Powered by Johnny. And then I am a family nurse practitioner, and I have been in nursing for almost 7 years. And one of kind of when we first met, not kind of actually, when we first met, I was going to work until I was 65 and then retire, and the whole, you guys all know that situation. And his mindset was totally opposite of mine. And so he was essentially like the catalyst for my entrepreneurship and my shift in mindset. So we got into real estate because he wanted to own apartment buildings, but we didn't start there. We started with flipping. So we've been flipping houses for about 3 years, and we came into commercial real estate in January. In January is when I met Alex, and he was one of the first people that I met in the commercial real estate space. And we instantly connected and formed a bond. And I have been on almost every single call that he has done, Mondays and Thursdays, ever since, I would say, February. And when he was allowing people to come up and present on this call, I stepped outside of my comfort zone and offered myself to present self-storage, because self-storage is something that we were introduced to early in our commercial real estate journey in March. And we were actually offered a co-GP spot on a 355 unit self-storage deal, which, full transparency, we were not able to complete our portion of the raise. So we did lose out on that opportunity, unfortunately. But there were a ton of learning opportunities within that experience. And I'm really glad that we did go through that. Also, it kind of like tossed us into the self-storage world. And ever since March, we have been really diving deep into self-storage. But I want to, obviously, full disclosure, we are new to commercial real estate. I am by no means a self-storage expert. And everything that I am going to present here is things that I have learned, in the last 6 months, based off of research and mentors and our experience on that capital raise attempt with that 355 unit deal. So that was a little bit of a long intro, but I wanted you guys to get the full gist of it. So Nick, you could go to the next slide. So the objectives of this presentation, first, the history of self-storage, which I think is actually really cool. A lot of people they kind of really skim by self-storage, even investors, because it's not really that sexy. It's kind of like boring and bland. And for the most part, I mean, there are some self-storage facilities now that are like super modern, super like elaborate. The KP on that 355 unit deal, he actually also has another self-storage deal facility that has a rooftop lounge. It's insane. It's in Texas. And I just have never seen anything like it. So I think it was really important to just highlight the history of self-storage and how we got to this point. And also the main objective, aside from the history of the self-storage, the recession resiliency of it, other valuable facts and stats, and obviously the pros and cons, is that it may not be the sexiest, but it has proven to be a strong and stable asset class. So I think that's important for people to really know and understand. So we're going to review the history of self-storage, which is, again, one of the coolest aspects of this, because it's like a massively evolved industry at this point. We're also going to discuss how it got the label of being recession resilient or recession resistant. So we're going to discuss, how it's maintained its resiliency through good times and even the worst of times. Valuable facts and stats, always important to highlight those, especially being that this asset class has become increasingly intriguing to investors recently, and why that is. And then also the pros and the cons, which some of the stats and valuable facts are going to go along with the pros, but the cons I feel like is really important because not everything is 100% of a good thing. There's also bad things that come along with it. And those are important to be aware of before obviously entering the space. So Nick, you can go to the next slide. Am I talking too fast? Or are we good?
Now you're doing good.
Okay, because I'm from New York and we talk fast.
Yeah,
So I just had to make sure. All right, so the history of self-storage. So early beginnings to its modern day success, really interesting. These photos on here are a little small. So on the next slide, I will show you bigger photos because I think it's really cool to see how we have transformed. So dating back all the way to prehistoric times, 9,000 BC. Actually in 2009, there was excavations done in Jordan and they found one of the oldest granaries. So people used to, store grains and foods in these granaries, which is really cool. Obviously now because we have fancy pantries and whatnot, but in terms of self-storage, there is evidence that shows in ancient China and Greece, they had developed elaborate storage systems where they were storing personal belongings or possessions rather. There's not so much evidence of this, but there is enough evidence to know that this is something that they did utilize. And it did not look like our current storage facilities. These are like, holes in like clay walls, and they used to store things in clay, like they would create like clay bins and vases, and they would store things in there and then put them underground. So that's pretty cool. So you'll see a bigger picture of that, when we move forward. Then moving on to 1891 was in Omaha, Nebraska. The Beckens brothers really kind of like took us to another level beyond obviously prehistoric times. And they started a moving and storage company. They started with 3 horse-drawn vans and 12 employees. And they now still operate with over 300 US locations. So that's pretty cool, I think. And then you move on to 1964, which is Odessa, Texas. And that was his name was Bob and his stepson. And they built A1, you store it, you lock it, you carry the key. A very literal name. Obviously, because not obviously, but for marketing purposes, they wanted to have their name the first to come up in the phone book. So that was pretty interesting. This was like your basic, they kind of birthed what is known today as modern day self-storage for the most part in the US. So it was cinder blocks, corrugated steel, overhead wooden doors. And then you move on to 1972, which is obviously major players, which some of you may, recognize their names, Public, Storage, and then mom and pop facilities ended up entering the space at that time. And that's you kind of still see those type of storage units, at least the aesthetics of them, currently. And then moving on to present day, 2023. Which now we have over 50,000 self-storage facilities in the US, and the industry is expected to reach about $43 billion this year alone. So pretty cool history, and just interesting how we have evolved. So you could go to the next slide, Nick. So these are just pictures, obviously just some visuals of how we came from prehistoric times all the way to the modern day of 2023. So that's just so you can see them a little bit bigger than the small photos that I had in the slide before that. And then Nick, you can move to the next slide. So self-storage has a history. History has proven that self-storage has been recession resilient or recession resistant, however you want to use the term, but it is proven. So numbers don't lie. So that's why I have these charts here. Self-storage REITs have historically been among the best performing investments in the REIT sector. Essentially, self-storage REITs have significantly outperformed other real estate investments over the past decade. So you can see here on the charts, obviously 2008, as we know, the Great Recession, all commercial real estate segments experienced a net annual loss of anywhere between 25 to 67%, except for self-storage. So the self-storage actually had a gain of 5% and was able to still distribute to their investors. So, and you can see the chart here. I know it's a little bit small, but the, actually it's small on my screen. I don't know about yours, but the purple, the blue, the green, the pink, the orange, those are all self-storage REITs. And then on that first chart there, and then that brown is like the pink is the S&P, and then Vanguard is the brown. So obviously self-storage had outperformed all of those, you know, again, during some of the worst of times that we've seen. And then following that, self-storage REITs also led all sectors with a total return of 55% over the pandemic period from February 2020 to June of 2022. So obviously you can see that there is, you know, a proven record of recession resiliency within the self-storage industry. So people have stuff, companies have stuff, businesses have stuff, and where do people put that stuff when they're downsizing, relocating, which is generally happening during, you know, recessions, and that's why they need self-storage facilities. So you could go to the next slide, Nick. So some valuable facts and stats. It's funny because you're switching and then I'm not switching. So I'm like, wait, I'm looking at two different slides. So some valuable facts and stats on self-storage. First and foremost, the industry is severely fragmented. And what that means basically in this instance is that 70 to 80% of self-storage facilities are individually owned and operated. So they're mom and pop. That leaves only about 20 to 30% that are owned by institutional investors. So what does that mean? That means that there's still room for the little guys like us to come in and take advantage of the massive value add opportunity that's available. So a lot of these facilities are on the verge, you know, the owners are on the verge of retirement. The facilities are being mismanaged. They're under market value, like their rents. They have not been automated or systemized, and they're not being marketed properly. So specifically with that 355 unit deal that we had the opportunity to be involved in, the issue there was the owners were only marketing and barely to college students. And so when the high season came, they were full. And then when the low season came, they were dropping significantly under 50% occupancy. And the competitors in the area were still at 80+% occupancy, even during the low season. So obviously there was a lot of room to grow there with the changing up the marketing, adding promotion. They automated the systems. They eliminated on-site management. So there was a lot of value add opportunity. And that's what we're seeing in the industry itself, that there's a lot of opportunity within the space because of those mom and pop owned facilities. And there's still room for people like us, as I said. And so the next one is annual revenue. So the self-storage industry's annual revenue in 2019 was 39.5 billion. That's an increase of 50% since 2010. So it continues to be the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing sectors in the US economy, which is really interesting because you wouldn't think self-storage. And then you move on to low expense ratio, which is pretty significant. It's one of actually the biggest advantages of self-storage. On average, self-storage expenses range between 28 to 40%, depending on the facility, of course. But if you compare that to multifamily, where your expense ratios are upwards of, 50% plus, depending, on your asset. So lower operational expenses obviously means higher returns on investments, which we always like higher returns, of course. And I think someone said in the chat, if it cash flows, it's sexy. So I like that too. Low break-even occupancy rate. Self-storage also has one of the lowest break-even occupancies in commercial real estate, ranging between 40 to 45%, which falls well below other asset classes. So with that specific deal that I have been mentioning, because that is my experience in self-storage, so I can obviously speak to that much better. That facility, we would have still performed at 44% occupancy and still been able to make our distributions to our investors. So that's pretty significant. And obviously our goal was not to be at 44%, it was to be at 80+%. But when Johnny and I were left that deal opportunity, they were at 92% occupancy. So that's pretty awesome. And then you get to diversity. So diversity in self-storage is great because there's no shortage of people in need of self-storage. And you probably would not think that so many people use self-storage, but 11.1% of households currently rent self-storage. So that's about 14.6 million households that are renting self-storage. And essentially all individuals, businesses, and companies use self-storage, especially with the rise in like e-commerce and small businesses in general, which we're seeing is definitely increase over the pandemic. There's a very high demand for self-storage. People are using it for their equipment. They're using it for their inventory. They're using it for their supplies. I've been talking to people obviously as of late, about self-storage, and they've mentioned to me that their mom has had a self-storage unit for like 10 years. Someone told me, and I was like, wait, what? Like, what does she put in there? But people just have stuff and they don't like to get rid of their stuff. And then also, again, with businesses, it's a great way for them to store their extra equipment and supplies. So there's definitely a high demand for it, and it's a very diverse asset class in terms of tenancy. All right, Nick, you could go to the next slide. So these are just some charts just to show you that obviously it's not just words on a slide. These are actual, this is actual information that I researched. I actually wrote an ebook on self-storage investing and building wealth through self-storage. And so I had to do a ton of research because I wanted obviously accurate information. So there's some charts here. As you can see in the top chart on the left, the self-storage market versus the multifamily market, and just showing how fragmented the self-storage market really is. So you see mom and pop account for about 76% of storage facilities, and then 24% are institutional operators. So that 76% right there, that leaves room for us if people are obviously interested in investing in self-storage. Whereas you have the multifamily market, which is more institutional operators compared to mom and pop. And then you have a comparison here of asset class advantages, showing the, between self-storage and multifamily. Not saying anything negative about multifamily at all. We are also involved in multifamily. We're not just focused on self-storage, but this is obviously about self-storage. So I'm just showing the comparison between the two asset classes when you have them side by side. And then you have the self-storage industry annual revenue. So you have the actual in the darker blue, like the bold, and then the projected in the dot, like the light blue. And this starts at 2010 all the way to 2024. So you can obviously see that it has, been increasing as we have been going throughout the years. And then here at the bottom is more of like an outlook up to 2027. So it shows different asset classes here. And you can see self-storage is outperforming. I think you can see here, actually, there's single family rentals, there's student housing, hotel, life sciences, apartments, medical offices, retail, malls, etc. So those are some charts just for some more information. You could go to the next slide, Nick. So I actually was on a call with a really cool woman today, Jacqueline, and she kept saying she's in self-storage, and she kept saying to me, self-storage equals no toilets. So I just threw this slide in there just to, just for some humor, because I thought that was really funny because it's very true. And a lot of people, when you talk to them about investing in real estate, they're like, I don't want to deal with toilets. I don't want to deal with, the trash. I don't want to deal with this. So, but it's always something about the toilets for some reason. People just really are grossed out by toilets. And so I just threw this up here just for some laughs. Okay, Nick, you could go to the next slide. We're almost done. So, some pros and cons of this asset class. Pros: lien laws versus landlord tenant laws. So self-storage is very interesting because you do have to deal with tenants, but you don't have to deal with like going to back and forth to court to get a tenant out. There is liens placed on their belongings. So if an individual rents a storage space, a lien is placed against those items, and they do not have the same rights as a tenant would in, say, an apartment building. So you're able to, any violation, you're able to basically evict that tenant from that unit, and then you send it to auction. And we had quite a few auctions actually with that 355 unit deal. And what's also really cool is that when an auction occurs, the operator or the owner of the facility gets paid first, and whatever is remaining, if there's any money remaining, goes to the tenant. So I thought that was actually really interesting because I years ago was in a relationship with someone, and they were a landlord, and they had a 3-family. And the 2 apartments upstairs stopped paying rent for a whole year, going back and forth to court. This is in New York, so New York City. So if you know, you know. And they back and forth for a whole year going to court, a loss of over $30,000. This gentleman lost in rent and just costs and all that. So needless to say, landlord tenant laws, especially in blue states, as many of you talk about on the other calls, is not great. So the lien laws are pretty awesome. Another couple of pros. A lot of the pros were on the valuable facts sheet, but no toilets. Trash, yes, but in a different way. And tenants, yes, but in a different way. And then higher returns. Obviously, as I mentioned, you have lower operational expenses. That means higher returns. And then you have your cons. So short-term leases. So obviously it's month to month. And that can be a little dicey because you have a higher turnover rate. So you have to be prepared for that. And a good operator obviously is going to be prepared for that. Oversupply. So you're seeing a lot of this in big markets like Texas markets, a lot of developing, because essentially self-storage is pretty inexpensive to build. And so, but in a sense, obviously it's not cheap, but it's less expensive than building a whole apartment building, right? So there's been, because of the demand and the cheaper cost to build, in these really, really big markets, you're seeing an oversupply. And so a lot of people that I speak to, they like secondary and tertiary markets for that reason, because there is not that oversupply. And then management. So some people think that self-storage is passive. It's not. You have to manage it. So yes, you can have property management, but you still have to manage the property management. So nothing is 100% hands off. So that is just something to be mindful of. And if you have a smaller facility and the numbers don't work with property management, obviously then you have to have someone on site managing that facility. So that's something to also keep in mind. And another thing just to mention about self-storage, 2 things actually, in terms of the returns. So over 9 years or so, based on the research that I did, self-storage facility owners across the US have seen an annual return on their investments of almost 17%. Just about, it was like 16.5%. And then a typical profit margin for a self-storage business is about 11%. Whereas like other businesses, such as restaurants, it's typically around 3 to 5%. So it's obviously much higher. you know, with those numbers, when you're talking about those numbers. So, for us, so you could go to the next slide, Nick. So my question is, if you didn't think self-storage was sexy about 15 minutes ago, do you think self-storage is sexy now? Because to me, I think it's a really cool asset class. I think it's, a lot of people don't know about it. And so I wanted to obviously share, you know, this presentation so that you guys could see just how sexy it is, because it's not only is it sexy, but it's stable and it's a strong asset class. And there's a lot of cash flow in the self-storage industry. So, I see a lot of yeses in the chat. I just see like the little blurbs. I don't see the whole chat, but yes, yes, yes. And also I wanted to say thank you. Well, first to Alex, I wish he was here because Nick, I love you, obviously, but I wish Alex was here a little bit because he actually owns self-storage.
Yeah.
And he also really likes self-storage. And we bond over self-storage a little bit as well. So I was looking forward to his input on his own facility. But I just wanted to say first, thank you to Alex for providing the platform. Thank you to Nick, always, as always. And also thank you to everyone here who joined. Thank you for your time. Obviously, thank you for your kindness. And as a thank you, I did write an ebook. It is free. I'm not selling it or anything like that. I did it purely to educate our investor network. So I am going to be offering this all to you guys. I'm going to put the link in the chat. I'm hoping that works, Nick. I put it in a Dropbox. So if I share
That'll work.
okay. All right. So I'm going to share the link in the chat. And I really hope you guys enjoy the ebook. There's a lot of really cool, fun facts in there as well. And also if you're interested in learning more, about investing in self-storage or future investment opportunities that we will have, because we're connecting with a lot of really experienced and super cool operators in the self-storage space. Here is our contact information. So our Instagram, LinkedIn, and our email. So please save that information. And I'd love to connect anyway, because I just love connecting with people regardless in the space. So I'm going to put this in the chat, the link for the ebook. And yeah, thank you all again. Thank you, Nick, for
You're welcome.
helping me with my slides.
If you want to do some Q&A, if anyone has any questions, since
Yeah,
this call's supposed to be like an hour and a half, but
yeah, for sure. So again, like I do want to say, full disclosure, I'm not a self-storage expert, so I will try to answer questions as best as possible. But yeah, if anyone has questions, absolutely, I'll do my best.
shout it out or raise your hand.
Hi, Monica. Thank
Donna
you.
asked, what is the average hold time for self-storage?
Well, so I could speak to the deal that we actually were just involved in. That was a 5-year plan. But the woman that I spoke to today, Jacqueline, she is big into self-storage as well. And she says that her deals are 2 to 4 years. So I think obviously, again, it just depends, right? The GP team that we were working with the Tuscaloosa deal, they have a huge portfolio, like over 2,000 units. And they were actually thinking about, like, they have like 8 different facilities in different areas. I think they were trying to lump those like all together in one big portfolio. So that was going to be a longer hold time for them, but they wanted to obviously do like a refinance, and pay out their investors and still offer their investors to stay in the deal, without any actual capital, but they would still get their split. So, infinite returns at that point for them.
There's a few more questions in chat.
Oh yeah. Oh wait, hold on. Okay, wait. What is the average? Okay, I did that one. Can you buy a couple units, or is it a full lot with a bunch of units? Well, I mean, there are facilities that have like 20 units, 30 units if you want to start really, really small, which some people do. But if you want to go bigger, I mean, this deal that we did was 355 units. So, you know, it just depends, but I wouldn't say a couple of units. It's usually like a facility you're buying. What would be the valuation of that 345 unit deal, and what is the average price and cash flow per door? Peter, I have all of that information, but I don't have it on the top at the top of my head, but I do have all that information. I had to have my numbers down pat. I don't know if Nick, you were there when I presented on Deal Tank.
I wasn't, but I heard it was great.
Yeah, that was my first time presenting on Deal Tank, and Sujay and Chris and Alex were great, but I had all the numbers there like written on a,
Did you submit it through the deal tank form?
yeah.
I could probably pull the
Oh,
numbers.
cool. Yeah, yeah. Um, thank you, Jim. I appreciate everyone's kindness. I think someone said something in the chat about it being an underwriting call. I'm sorry. Can you hold for 5+ years? Oh yeah, for sure. Do people really live in the storage unit sometimes? I'm trying to save money for my next deal and need a place to crash. It's actually funny because when I was doing research for the ebook, people actually make their storage units into like man caves or she sheds. And they actually like go to their storage units and like hang out. Which I thought was pretty interesting. But I guess if you have a house or you have an apartment and you don't have a man cave or a she shed, and you're paying like, you know, in some markets, maybe like $80 a month for your own, like, you know, private space, like not too bad, right? I don't know. I've heard
Um,
that the storage space nowadays has multiple purposes. Content studio, yeah, people are like getting really super creative with their storage units, like they're like running their whole businesses out of them. It was really fascinating doing research for the ebook, and when we got into this deal I was like, wow, this is like a whole new world. Like it's insane what people use their self-storage units for. What are the usual rent for the largest space? That deal that we did, the largest space, I believe, was $160 a month. And that was actually, I could tell you, that was not a 10 by 10. That was let me tell you now. I don't think
and
Nick has it there, but
Peter, the purchase price of the deal was 3.65 million, which comes out to a little over 10,000 per door or per storage shed. Um, we don't have the cash flow, but you listed it as a 9.9% cash on cash.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. It was 9.9% cash on cash. It had an 8% pref with a 50-50 split. And then also the is Nick that the IRR is not there, right? I don't think
No, the
so.
IRR isn't on the deal tank submission.
Actually I have it here though in my files. I should have kept that little sheet. I have it in one of my folders. It was a 2.02x multiple, 8% pref with a 50-50 split, 17.4% IRR, 20.5% average annual return with a 9.9% average cash on cash for that deal. So yeah, the raise was 2.3 million on that deal. And okay, so the right now the rates, because it's high season at the Tuscaloosa deal, for the largest unit that they have is a 20 by 20, and that's $439 a month. That's non-climate. Because they have climate controlled and non-climate controlled. And their smallest unit is a 5 by 5, and that's 99. No, they're 5 by, well, no, 5 by 5 is their smallest, which is $99 a month. But right now they're still in their high season. So at the Tuscaloosa deal, their high season is going to be until about the end of August.
There's another question in chat.
I've heard that. What are the usual greeting more avenues of income besides just storing must look good when presenting to the investors? Think resources for off-market deals. Honestly, I wouldn't be able to answer that question, but maybe someone here. I don't know if anyone else here in Legends or off-market deals. No. I'm not sure. We usually, I mean, usually we talk to brokers, use Crexy, LoopNet, but broker relations is usually where you get a lot of your deals from. What are the insurance requirements? Do tenants just sign a waiver and you're good, or can they come after you if there's a flood, fire, or theft? William, that's actually a good question. I know for investors, investors would ask me that question. And obviously there's insurance, but for a tenant, that is a good question. I actually would like to know the answer to that myself. I paid insurance when I rented a storage space up in Westchester. Oh, there. Okay. So yeah, someone actually answered that. So yeah. Oh yeah. You know what? Actually, Nick, was there, oh, I probably didn't put it on there. There was insurance, in the numbers. That's like another revenue source is insurance, if I remember correctly.
Let me check.
But I don't, it might not be on there. Let me see.
No, I don't see it on.
I know on the property management calls, they would talk about tenants who purchased insurance. So maybe it's an option.
Mhm.
If you want to purchase insurance or not.
Probably. Because I would think like property insurance would cover most of the property damages. Maybe. I don't know.
What's the down payment requirement for a commercial investment like this? Whew. Depends on the deal. I mean, it could be, if it's like a 20 unit, and the facility is like, I don't know, 200, 300,000. Nick, you guys would probably be better able to answer, though. That's like real underwriting questions.
I mean, usually I think we're underwriting at 65% DSCR. So yeah, probably like 35% down at least. I mean, that's multifamily. I don't know what they
It's
put
pretty,
down for Fort Pierce, but I think it's similar.
yeah, the debt on this specifically was 60% LTV,
Oh, that's
5.9.
what I meant, not DSCR. Yeah, 60% LTV. Yeah, so I think Alex's most of his underwriting at 65. So yeah, so probably 40 to 35% down.
Yeah. And then Karen, who asked that question, if you're gonna do it yourself and be like, you can go out and buy a smaller facility and run it, and not do like a syndication. But if you wanted a bigger deal and you wanted to be an active investor, like a GP on a deal, that's totally different than being a limited partner, which would be an LP. That would be a passive investor, and the down payment, well, not down payment, but the minimum investment for that 355 unit deal was $50,000. So I know some deals, if it's like a fund, there's like $25,000, but most, at least deals that I've seen, but again, I'm new to commercial real estate since, like I said, January, is I've seen almost all the deals that have come across are 50,000 minimum for investors. I don't know if anyone else here, sees different, but I think I've only seen one fund that was 25,000 was the minimum investment. Still 40% minimum raise. Peter, can you elaborate? I'm not sure.
He's talking about.
The LTV, you covered it already.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? This is good. Does anyone here, or is anyone here in a self-storage deal as an LP? Is anyone here a GP on a self-storage deal, or no? And like, anyone here at all?
I have a question about the splits. I know in multifamily, it's Jason, by the way. Hey, Ali, great job.
Hey, Jason.
So,
Yeah.
So like 27, 20, 80, 30, 70 multifamily is common. Is 50-50 common in self-storage?
Yeah, it's pretty common because the higher returns. So there are 70-30 splits, just depends on the deal. The specific deal that we were on was 50-50. And I do have to say that was one thing that turned some of our investors away, was they weren't used to self-storage. They were used to multifamily. And so they're used to seeing a 70-30 split.
Right.
But with the higher returns overall, the 50-50, it was like the GPs on that deal were like 50-50 on this deal is amazing. They get an 8% pref return. So, yeah, but so it depends, because they had that GP team had another deal in Texas and it was a 70-30 split.
Okay. And can you go over a pref for us?
So pref return is, so this one was 8% pref. So basically, and hopefully I explained this correctly, the investors would get paid 8% before anyone else gets paid. So before any, like, distribution wise. So before any of the GPs get paid, the investors have to get paid their 8% first, and then the 50-50 split.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah. I hope I explained that correctly. Anyway.
Yeah. No, that's what that's how I would have explained it, at least, but
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the question.
Yeah. And then as far as people being in self-storage, I don't hear anybody, but I mean, people in multifamily who are like really big, I know that's just such a big space, and it's just another asset class inside of commercial real estate that's definitely where you want to be in long term. So
yeah, it's a good one. I like multifamily too, obviously, because I like that, at least the people that I have met in multifamily, they want to provide safe, stable, functional living for people. They want to provide housing for people, like clean, again, safe, stable housing for people. And I think that's amazing. So, especially living in a big city, like there's a housing crisis here. I mean, there's a housing crisis everywhere. So I do like multifamily investors. Like, I love that. We still want to own apartment buildings. But self-storage is just, it's very intriguing. So it's something that we kind of, we got the opportunity that came across the table. So it kind of like, we kind of went down that spiral and then just got stuck in it.
Right. And there's so many positive things as a business model for self-storage. It's like way less overhead, the operating expenses. They decide to not pay you, you can, get rid of their stuff instantly. You don't have to repaint the floors and fix the countertops. So there's just so many positive things that self-storage comes along to run a business. So totally.
All great points, actually. Yes.
Yeah. A buddy who's a real estate investor, he actually likes self-storage more because of all these things. He's like, it's so much easier, it's so much better. He's been telling to me for months, kind of like after you got started, it sounds like, right when you got in, like a month or two later, he started like raving to me about it. I'm like, wow, these are all obvious, like just like no brainers, like why be in it. So
yeah, the GP team that we were a part of, which thankfully we still have a really good relationship with them, and they're willing to get us on more self-storage deals, so that's great. But they were in multifamily first and started transitioning out once they had their first self-storage facility, because they were like, wait, wow.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I've heard also people adding, because it's commercial, so anytime you can increase the NOI, you're gonna increase your value. And adding U-Hauls to your self-storage, and that's like a really easy way to And are you a little bit familiar with that? And
yeah, they actually, right before they closed the raise, and obviously we were exited from that deal, they had just gotten their contract with U-Haul. And they were also in the process of ordering portables, because they had some land that was not being used. It didn't have storage units on it, and they were like, why not like utilize this land? So they were ordering portables for the next high season, so so they can be at 100% occupancy the next time around.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, so Any other questions? I don't see anything else in the chat, Nick.
Already. Well, we hit about an hour, so that's pretty good. Alex gave me about a 20 minutes notice on this and nothing else to talk about. So
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you so much again, everyone. I see some familiar faces here, so thank you for the support. And
did you
yeah,
put the link to your ebook in chat?
yeah, I put it. I'm gonna put it again though, because I know there was a bunch of questions after the fact, so I'm gonna put it again. And then
Also,
I'm gonna put my contact info.
just some notes. Alex is running a 12-week multifamily mastery program. It is $500 for 2 people. And I will put the link in chat if anyone is interested. He's been talking about it for like 2 weeks now, so all you guys already probably know.
I'm excited for that.
Me too.
I won that in that
I
game.
know, I know.
I was like not expecting.
Yeah, if anyone has any more questions, shout them out, or you can reach out to Allie.
And I'm putting
You
my
guys have any marketing questions? I'm here too. I don't know. We can fill the time.
All right, so I'm putting my contact info as well. There we go.
Ready, there it is. Make sure to follow her on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Yes, and Nick is helping me with my social media skills.
Yeah.
And I already got the LinkedIn down with Monica and Faisal. So
I'm actually talking to Faisal this week, so
yeah, he's awesome. He is amazing.
great.
He is I just love him. He's amazing. He is just such an amazing human.
Yes, he's awesome. I love him.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all for joining us on another underwriting call. Allie, you were great. Very informative presentation.
Thank you all. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, everyone.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good night, guys.